Happy holidays! Let's keep that quilty vibe going with this fun sampler for the winter holidays. Today I am showing you how to make this tree block so you can use it as part of this collection, or you could make a whole forest just of those trees. Another fun block to embellish. Let's get started. Here are all the fabric pieces cut according to the pattern. First, we need to make our half rectangle triangle units from our pairs of fabric. Remember, we always layer fabrics right side up when you are making the cuts for half rectangle triangles. We need an uphill and a downhill unit of each of these. So I will cut my uphill, and unfortunately, since I'm using a print for one of these, I cannot make the downhill unit. If I use batiks, I could just turn this over and make a downhill unit and not have to cut other squares, but with printed fabric, it doesn't work the same way. So this unit will go in my scrap bin for another project. With my larger pieces, same thing. I'm going to make an uphill cut from corner to corner, making sure my fabrics are standing on that short edge. And then I can alternate the layers so that I have opposite colors matched and get those ready to sew. Looking for those mountain peaks. As I always remind you, working with half rectangle triangles, you want 2 mountain peaks. You don't want things lined up perfectly. You need that offset to make these units work. And then we also need a downhill unit, so I'll just angle that from the opposite corners. But the process is the same to alternate your fabric, so you've got one light and one dark, and we're just gonna look for those 2 mountain peaks and we're ready to sew. Now that we've got our half rectangle triangles sewn, we need to trim them to size, and the larger ones are using my favorite 2x3 section. So these are easy to trim with my little bit different ruler that has all the markings you need. I can just line up the diagonal on my seam line and trim. And you'll notice that I like to make my units oversized. I don't mind this waist, but if that seems like too much fabric waste for you, then just trim your initial pieces a little bit smaller. But I recommend practicing with this larger size first so that you can be accurate in your cutting with this awkward unit. Half rectangle triangles are not as forgiving as half square triangles because they don't rotate the same way. So I'd rather have a little bit of extra fabric and trim down than to have things get messed up and have to, redo the whole block. And then we've got the opposite diagonal. So you can see how these blocks are going to pair together to make the portions of our tree. These units look very similar to the square triangle in a square that you get with the I think it's called the Peaky and Spike rulers. I'll have to check, and I'll put a note up of what the other specialty ruler is that makes this kind of unit, but this is still a rectangular unit, so it wouldn't work in that triangle in a square. I mean, you could alter the pattern, of course, if you wanted to use a different ruler, but we're working with half rectangle triangles for this one to make our little bit different blocks that finish at 6 by 9 inches. I've switched to a regular ruler for this smaller unit since the diagonal didn't match up with my little bit different ruler. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for where that 1/4 inch in from my overall block measurements are going to be. And I'm putting those 2 points on my diagonal. So I took my overall block measurement and went in 1/4 inch from the corner and make sure that diagonal fits there. And then I can trim 2 sides. And then when I rotate it around, I'm gonna line up the measurement I want. And then if I go 1/4 inch in, I should be pretty close to that diagonal seam line. So you don't need specialty rulers to make half rectangle triangles, but they do make the math a little simpler. Okay, so laying out the block, I've got my uphill and downhill triangles. I've got a tree trunk, and then I just need to check my pattern off screen a little bit to show you how all this will come together. So we've got some background pieces that go sideways, and I realize that I'm using directional fabric, and I could recut these pieces so that my, you know, my stripes are going the right way. So let me just stare at this for a minute. And you know what, with snow flurries and a busy background, I think I'm just going to go ahead. I get kind of lazy sometimes, and I just want to get this sample sewn for you guys. So we'll let it be a little bit chaotic with those stripes going in different directions. But since there's, you know, white space in between, I think it's overall going to be fine. And here is our Christmas tree. This block, I think, is going to be wonderful to embellish. You could do some beadwork, you could do some fancy embroidery stitches, you could add buttons, just a lot of fun with this block. And the 6 by 9 size is perfect as a mug rug if you don't want to make the entire Holidaze sampler. So have some fun with this forest of trees. Make many, many blocks. Be sure to visit truebluequilts.com for all of the patterns in the Holidaze sampler and the Little Bit Different collection. Let me know in the comments how you are enjoying the half rectangle triangle blocks.